Hello everyone, I'm Nathan Wilson, BYU Geography, and today I'll be talking about the Kurds in Iraqi Kurdistan. So, the Kurds live in mostly northern Iraq. As you can see here, they are still relatively centralized, but relatively scattered as well. So they cover parts of Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Armenia. And so the unifying characteristics of the Kurds are language, religion, and ethnicity. And so language, the Kurds speak Kurdish, which is most related to Pashto and Persian, which is Persian being spoken in Iran. And religion, the majority of Kurds are Sunni Muslims, and there is some variation as to how Sunni Islam is practiced by the Kurds, but for the most part, they are Sunni Muslims. And then ethnicity, the Kurds are Caucasian, Indo-European. It's not known exactly where they come from because their history is not well documented. Some sources say that they are from the Caucasus, that they're Caucasian. Some sources say that they actually come from the ancient Medes of the Bible, which is pretty cool. But we just don't know exactly where they come from. Now, the natural resources inside of Kurdistan, as this map shows, are oil and gas. So these green parts here are the oil fields, and the red parts here are the gas fields. And this whole region, if you can see my cursor, is the Kurdistan regional government, which is essentially a semi-autonomous region, which goes into status. So the Kurds, as I just said, semi-autonomous region, they are recognized as an ethnic group by Iraq, but they're not really recognized by any other countries that they live in. So Turkey is definitely the least cooperative when it comes to recognizing Kurdistan, because Turkey sees the Kurds as a threat. So with that, their aspirations as to becoming a state, they, at first, when it became a semi-autonomous region, they were satisfied with simply recognition. But now they want to be independent. They do participate as a semi-autonomous region with Iraq. In fact, they have their own military, which is actually better than the Iraqi military, and they end up fighting ISIS more than Iraq does. They have a stronger economy than Iraq does, which is somewhat of a cause of tension between Baghdad and Kurdistan regional government. And they have their own parliament. So they have their own form of government, stronger economy, and a stronger military than Iraq, but are still only a semi-autonomous region. And so, as I said, they want to become independent. Now, as to how viable this is, I don't think it's exceptionally viable as to becoming a state. Mainly because, as this map shows in the red highlighted parts, these are military installations, these red dots, since 2018 that Turkey has set up, taking control of northern Iraq, in fact, and they've been taking territory from the Kurds and from Iraq. And this is mainly because they are trying to fight the PKK, which is a terrorist organization from Kurdistan. And so this gets into the methods of gaining statehood. So most of them have been diplomatic. Kurdistan, of course, has its Kurdistan regional government and works together with Baghdad, the capital of Iraq. Although, of course, some of it is militarized. The PKK is a terrorist organization, or at least it is recognized as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States. So it is my opinion that the reason that Western nations like the UK and the US recognize the PKK as a terrorist organization is because they simply want to be in good graces with Turkey. And so in order to maintain a happy relationship with Turkey, they simply acknowledge the PKK as a terrorist organization. Whether or not the PKK is a genuine terrorist organization, I think it is somewhat up for debate in my opinion. But those are the methods: diplomacy and militarized conflict. Now, if I pull up my notes here, there's a quote from Nietzsche that really helps to illustrate this battle between states and nations that I think is very enlightening. So this is Nietzsche's quote. States and nations represent two seemingly irrepressible forces in collision. States, with their large armies, expansionist ideologies and economies, and international state support networks, and nations, with their historical and geographic tenacity, anchored by the most indestructible of all human inventions, place-based culture. And I'll say the last part again, the most indestructible of all human inventions, place-based culture. And so there is that tension between Kurds and all the other countries that they live in, because these other countries don't want to give up their territory, they don't want to give up their oil fields and their gas fields to this ethnic group. But the Kurds have that desire to be independent, to be sovereign. And so with that in mind, this is my recommendation for a solution. The oil infrastructure of the area is relatively undeveloped. Interestingly enough, though, even with this relatively undeveloped infrastructure for oil, Kurdistan exports about 200,000 barrels of oil per day, which is pretty significant, and it's a major source of revenue. And it makes more money than Iraq does. And so there is resource nationalism here, that these different countries do not want to give up their oil and gas fields to Kurdistan. But I think something that could alleviate this resource nationalism could be the development of the oil and gas infrastructure. If there could be more oil provided, then these different countries could share more oil and gas. Whether or not they'll share is a different issue. But if there is less tension and less of a need or less desperation when it comes to having enough oil and gas for their energy needs, that could diffuse some of the tension that is related to resource nationalism. And so with that, the increase of or development of oil and gas infrastructure, if Iraq were to make Kurdistan in a way like Spain and the United States, its own mini state within the country. And if these other countries were to do the same thing, where it's an autonomous region, it is recognized, that could potentially fulfill Kurdistan's desire to become its own state. So with that, thank you so much for watching. This is my presentation on the Kurds.